The first officer stepped into the Harper home expecting a routine welfare check. Instead, he found a scene that didn't match anyone's version of events. The house was strangely quiet. Too quiet. A chair lay on its side. A wine bottle rolled slowly in a circle on the tile as if someone had pushed it moments earlier. A phone sat cracked on the floor, its screen shattered but still glowing with missed notifications. And there, at the center of the kitchen, sat 17-year-old Kendra Brooks. She wasn't crying. She wasn't screaming. She just stared at her hands, covered in blood that didn't belong to her. When the paramedics asked what happened, she whispered the same thing over and over. "I don't remember. I don't remember." Across from her, Daniel Harper, a father of two, lay on his back with 2 deep wounds to the chest. No signs of a struggle on his body. No defensive marks. It looked fast, too fast. But the detail that pulled every investigator's attention wasn't the body. It was the single muddy footprint left near the sink. A print too small to belong to Daniel. A print too large to belong to Kendra. Someone else had been in that house. Near the back hallway, a small camera was found in the trash, wires ripped out, as if someone didn't want anyone reviewing what it recorded. The strange part? Most people in that home didn't even know the camera existed. A detective turned to a colleague and whispered, "If she didn't rip that camera down, who did?" Kendra didn't look up. She just held her hands out, shaking, repeating the same line almost like a person trying to convince themselves. But there's something this room isn't revealing yet, and it changes everything we think we know. If you're hooked on unraveling the twisted truth behind these cases, hit that subscribe button right now. Every week, we dive deep into the darkest corners of real crime, the evidence they missed, the psychology behind the madness, and the questions that keep investigators up at night. Subscribe to True Crime Analysis and let's solve these mysteries together. Before that night, nobody in Maple Ridge would have believed Kendra could be connected to anything violent. Not this girl, not the teenager parents trusted with their children for years. Kendra lived with her mother in a small 2-bedroom apartment on Cedar Lane. Her mom worked long hours at a local diner, sometimes double shifts, leaving Kendra to help raise her little brother. She cooked, cleaned, tutored him, and still kept her grades high. People in town called her the dependable one. Every weekend, she babysat for families all over the neighborhood. She never missed a booking. Kids liked her because she actually played with them instead of scrolling on her phone. Parents liked her because she was mature, quiet, and never caused problems. But there was a side of Kendra nobody paid attention to. She wanted to feel valued. Not just trusted, valued. After years of carrying adult responsibilities at home, she liked when someone noticed her effort. She liked feeling important. And in a moment of loneliness, that desire made her vulnerable in ways no one saw coming. Her classmates didn't see her as popular or outgoing. She was the kind who blended into the background of school hallways. But at the Harper home, she felt different. The kids hugged her like family. The neighbors greeted her like she belonged. For the first time, she felt needed. But feeling needed is one thing, feeling seen is another. And that difference mattered more than anyone realized. Kendra never imagined her connection to the Harper home would grow into something she couldn't control. She never imagined her name would one day be spoken on every local news channel. Because the person she trusted most in that house would soon become the one who broke her. Long before the night everything went wrong, the Harper household carried a quiet weight that outsiders never noticed. From the outside, their home looked ordinary: kids' shoes by the door, school drawings taped to the fridge, a backyard swing that squeaked every time the wind pushed it. But inside, the marriage between Daniel and Emily Harper was barely holding together. Daniel, a contractor who spent long days on job sites, felt like he was living on autopilot. He worked, he came home, he tried to be present, but something in him had started drifting. That drifting showed up in small ways at first: forgotten anniversaries, empty conversations, long pauses before answering simple questions. Emily noticed every change. She worked late-night hospital shifts, handling emergencies with calm precision, yet couldn't seem to steady her own home life. She tried to fix things, planning dinners, suggesting counseling, but Daniel always answered the same way. "I'm just tired. It's been a long week." Those weeks kept stretching into months. Kendra, meanwhile, became a regular presence in the home. She'd babysat the Harper kids since she was 14, and by 17 she moved through their house like family. Emily often thanked her with extra pay or a warm hug. Daniel thanked her with long conversations he pretended were innocent. The problem was that Daniel liked how she looked at him with admiration, not disappointment. He hadn't felt that from his wife in a long time. Kendra didn't realize she was filling a role neither of them should have allowed to exist. Emily sensed something was shifting, even if she couldn't name it yet. The way Daniel suddenly checked his phone more often, the way he stood a little closer to the babysitter than necessary. She just didn't know how deep the connection had already gone, or how far it would push all three of them. It started as a regular October evening. Cold wind pressing against the windows, the kids already asleep upstairs, and Kendra settling onto the couch with her homework. She expected Daniel to come home around midnight. He walked in much earlier. The moment the door opened, Kendra could tell something was wrong. His steps were uneven. His jacket was soaked from the weather. And he clutched a half-finished bottle like he'd been drinking long before he reached the house. He didn't greet her. Didn't ask about the kids. He just dropped his keys on the counter and sat at the table, staring at nothing. When Kendra gently asked if he was okay, he let out a tired laugh. "Nothing's okay. Not in this house. Not in my life." She tried to keep her voice steady, telling him things could get better. But Daniel wasn't looking for hope, he wanted comfort. Attention. Someone who would listen without judging him. He told her his marriage was falling apart. That he felt trapped. That Emily didn't understand him anymore. Kendra, young and wanting to help, stepped closer than she should have. One soft word led to another. One moment of reassurance led to him brushing her hair back, telling her he felt safe with her. Kendra froze when he leaned in. She knew it was wrong. She knew this man had a wife and 2 children upstairs. But she also knew what it felt like to be invisible. That night, a single decision tied their lives together in a way none of them could escape. And while Kendra thought she understood the consequences of that moment, she hadn't even seen the first warning sign. That warning sign was already inside the house, recording everything they were about to do. Emily Harper wasn't the kind of woman who jumped to conclusions. She spent years working hospital nights, making split-second decisions with steady hands. But at home, her instincts were just as sharp. She felt changes long before Daniel ever admitted anything was wrong. It began with the late-night calls he stepped outside to answer. Then the new password on his phone. Then the way he avoided her eyes when she asked simple questions. At first, she tried to convince herself she was overthinking. Marriage could be difficult, especially with 2 young children and work schedules that rarely lined up, but the uneasiness kept growing. And eventually, doubt turned into certainty. One night, while Daniel showered, Emily checked the family tablet. She found nothing obvious, but she noticed the messages between him and Kendra had increased. Harmless at a glance, but too frequent. Too familiar. Emily closed the tablet, quiet yet breathless. She didn't confront Daniel. Not yet. Instead, she bought a small camera, cheap, discreet, meant for security use, and placed it high on a shelf in the living room, hidden between framed photos. She didn't tell anyone. She wanted clarity, not an argument. For several days, she reviewed clips after work. Most nights showed nothing unusual. Kids playing. Kendra reading to them, Daniel coming home late and exhausted. Emily almost convinced herself she had misread everything. Until one night, she came home early from her shift and checked the footage before Daniel returned. She watched Kendra and Daniel standing closer than they ever should have been, his hand on her shoulder. A look she recognized instantly, because she had once received it from him. Emily didn't cry. She didn't panic. She turned off the tablet, placed it face down on the table, and sat in silence. She wasn't ready to confront them yet, because she needed more than suspicion. She wanted proof Daniel couldn't talk his way out of. After that night, the relationship between Daniel and Kendra accelerated in a way neither of them fully controlled. What began as a moment of weakness turned into secret messages, late-night conversations, and quiet meetings that should have never taken place. Kendra, just 17, believed Daniel cared for her. She believed his frustration at home meant he needed her. She didn't understand he was using that attention to escape problems he had no intention of fixing. Daniel told her things that made her feel special. He said he felt understood. He said she made life easier. He said he wasn't sure his marriage would last. But he never said he planned to leave Emily. Not once. Their moments together always happened when the house was empty or when the kids were upstairs sleeping. Kendra tried to convince herself it was harmless, that she wasn't hurting anyone. Daniel encouraged that belief, telling her to relax and not overthink it. Still, he grew distant at times, changing plans, taking longer to respond, acting guilty when their conversations almost overlapped with Emily's schedule. Kendra noticed the shifts, but she kept hoping he meant the affectionate words he whispered. She didn't know Daniel had started drafting a message meant for his wife. A message explaining the entire situation but placing the burden on Kendra instead of himself. In his version, she was the one who pushed for the relationship. She was the one who threatened him. She was the one who made mistakes. He planned to save himself by sacrificing her. Kendra never saw the message on his phone that night. But she felt something growing: distance, tension, something she couldn't name. She thought he was pulling away because he was scared. She didn't realize he was preparing to shift the blame onto her the moment everything collapsed. And the moment was coming faster than either of them expected. Daniel Harper was never honest about what he planned to do. While Kendra believed they shared something meaningful, Daniel was quietly preparing a way out, a way that would protect himself, his reputation, and possibly his marriage. Late one evening, after finishing a contracting job on the far side of town, he sat alone in his truck typing a long message to Emily. He didn't send it. He saved it, edited it, rewrote it, and saved it again. The text told the truth, but in a version that worked entirely in his favor. He wrote that he had made a mistake. Then he wrote that Kendra pushed for more. Then he added a line saying she threatened to tell lies if he rejected her. None of it matched what actually happened. Daniel wasn't planning to confess out of guilt. He was planning to confess before someone else did. He wanted Emily to think he was the victim in a mess he didn't create. A man caught in an impossible situation, trying to protect his family. He never stopped to consider how a teenager might feel after being blamed for something she didn't initiate. He never considered the legal consequences, or the emotional ones. To him, the draft message was his escape route. The night he finished writing it, Daniel stared at the glowing screen for several minutes. His finger hovered over the send button, but fear held him still. He knew Emily was already suspicious, and he needed the timing to be perfect. He didn't send it that night. He didn't delete it either. He kept it in the drafts folder, waiting for the moment he would need it. What Daniel didn't know was that his plan would never move past his phone screen, because long before he could expose Kendra to save himself, something far more dangerous was already set in motion. The night everything came crashing together started with heavy rain sweeping across Maple Ridge. Thunder rolled through the neighborhood, shaking windows and darkening the sky long before sunset. It was the kind of night most people stayed inside, wrapped in blankets, waiting for the weather to pass. But inside the Harper home, a different kind of tension was building. Kendra received a message from Daniel around 6 p.m. He asked if she could watch the kids for a few hours. She almost said no. Her mother had asked her to help at home, but Daniel insisted he really needed her tonight. Those words pulled her in. She had no idea what he was planning. She arrived just after 7. The kids were already asleep, the house dim and silent. Daniel was in the kitchen, halfway through a bottle, his shoulders tense and his jaw tight. He greeted her with a nod, not a smile. Something about his expression made her uneasy. She sensed he wanted to talk, but not in a way that felt comforting. Something heavier was sitting on him, and she didn't know if it involved her or Emily or both. Across town, Emily made a decision of her own. After a long shift at the hospital, she clocked out earlier than scheduled. She didn't tell any co-workers she was leaving. She didn't call Daniel to say she was on her way. She simply took off her badge, grabbed her jacket, and walked out into the storm. The roads were slick. Streetlights reflected off the pavement like long, broken streaks. Emily's hands tightened on the wheel as she drove toward home, her mind racing with unanswered questions, replaying every odd moment she had noticed over the past few weeks. Back at the house, Kendra stood in the kitchen doorway, watching Daniel pace. She didn't know why the house felt heavier than usual. She didn't know Emily was already heading in their direction, and she had no idea the next hour would haunt every person involved for the rest of their lives. Rain hammered the roof as Kendra stepped farther into the kitchen. Daniel kept pacing, rubbing his forehead like he was trying to push away a thought he didn't want to face. She asked if he was okay, but he barely nodded. The wine on the counter wasn't his first drink of the night. His eyes were tired. His voice was flat. Something in him had snapped long before Kendra walked through the door. He suddenly grabbed his phone off the table, typed a few words, erased them, then set it down again. Kendra didn't know he was trying to work up the courage to send the message that blamed everything on her. She stepped closer, trying to calm him. "Did something happen?" He answered with something she never expected, "This needs to stop." Her heart sank. She asked what he meant, but Daniel avoided her eyes. Instead, he reached for the bottle again and said he couldn't keep living like this, whatever that meant to him. He kept talking in circles, bringing up his marriage, his mistakes, his fear of losing his kids. Kendra tried to respond, but he cut her off. "You don't understand what I'm risking," he said. He picked up his phone again. This time the screen lit up long enough for Kendra to read a few words, her name, followed by a sentence she didn't fully catch. His thumb hovered over the screen as if he was about to expose everything she had been protecting him from. Kendra reached for his arm to get his attention, pleading for him to talk to her instead of through a message. Daniel jerked away, knocking a chair sideways. The loud crash startled both of them. For a moment, neither spoke. The storm outside rattled the windows. The tension inside the house matched every strike of lightning. And just steps away, near the back hallway, the hidden camera quietly recorded the first seconds of a fight that would soon turn deadly. What happened next has been told 3 different ways, one from Kendra, one from Emily, and one through the evidence scattered across the kitchen. None of the versions match perfectly, and that's what made the case so difficult to understand. After the chair fell, Daniel's frustration rose quickly. He accused Kendra of making his life harder, of showing up at the wrong times, of not knowing when to back off. The words hit her like a punch. She told him he was being unfair, that he had pulled her into something she never asked for. The argument grew louder. Sharp words. Raised voices. Footsteps shifting across the tile. Kendra said Daniel grabbed her wrist. Emily later claimed she heard him yelling over the phone. The physical evidence suggested the struggle lasted only seconds. At some point, Daniel reached for the counter, maybe for balance, maybe for something else. A wine glass shattered. A knife slipped from the cutting board. The room turned chaotic in an instant. 2 wounds to the chest. Both deep. Both fatal. Daniel fell backward, hitting the floor with enough force to move the bottle across the tile. Kendra said she didn't understand what had happened until she saw the blood on her hands. She backed up, shaking, nearly slipping as she tried to call out for help. Somewhere between the argument and the moment Daniel collapsed, a muddy footprint appeared near the sink. Too small for Daniel. Too large for Kendra. Fresh enough that whoever made it had been in the house minutes earlier. And near the back hallway, the camera Emily installed was ripped from the wall and tossed in the trash. Whoever destroyed it acted fast, like they knew exactly what it had recorded. The truth of those moments remains trapped between 2 women, one claiming she wasn't there, the other insisting she was. In the hours after Daniel Harper's death, the investigation moved fast. Officers separated Kendra from the scene, took her clothes as evidence, collected samples from her hands, and photographed every inch of the kitchen. They expected the case to point clearly in one direction, but nothing lined up the way they thought it would. Kendra's timeline was straightforward. She arrived shortly after 7. The kids were asleep. Daniel was already drinking. The argument escalated within minutes. That part seemed believable. But other details complicated everything. First, the neighbor across the street reported seeing a car pull into the driveway around the same time the storm began. She couldn't confirm the make or model, but she swore she saw headlights turn off near the garage. The timing didn't match Daniel or Kendra. Then came Emily's work records. She claimed she stayed on shift until close to midnight, yet the hospital logs showed she scanned out 2 hours earlier. When detectives asked why she left, she said she felt sick and went to her car to rest. She couldn't explain why she didn't tell anyone. She couldn't explain why her phone location stopped updating for nearly an hour. When investigators compared her statement with the muddy footprint found in the kitchen, the questions grew heavier. Emily wore size 7 shoes. She admitted that much, but she insisted she never stepped foot in that house that night. Kendra, still in shock, told them she heard a woman's voice during the argument, faint, distant, coming from somewhere near the hallway. She said the voice sounded like Emily. Emily denied it. She denied everything. The detectives weren't sure which woman to believe. The evidence wasn't sure either. Somewhere between their conflicting stories was the truth hidden behind choices none of them were ready to admit. The muddy footprint became the centerpiece of the entire investigation. It measured just under 9 inches, narrow at the heel, consistent with a woman's size 7. The print was angled toward the back hallway, not the front door, meaning whoever made it was inside the house, not entering. That alone ruled out most possibilities. Detectives examined every pair of shoes in the Harper home. The kids' shoes were too small. Daniel's were much larger. Kendra's footwear didn't match. None of her shoes had the same tread pattern, and none carried any mud from the yard. So whose shoe made the print? A forensic analyst studied the pattern carefully. The edges were crisp, the dirt still moist. The person who left it had stepped into the home within minutes of the struggle. That meant one thing: the print had to be connected to the deadly argument, not something earlier in the day. When detectives questioned Emily again, she appeared calm but guarded. She admitted her shoes were size 7. She admitted she owned a pair with a similar tread, but she repeated the same line: she never stepped into the house. The problem was the footage. Even though the hidden camera had been ripped down, the remaining wiring showed it was recording at the moment of the fight. Whoever destroyed it knew exactly where it was. Emily claimed she had no idea the camera existed. Kendra said otherwise. She said Emily once complained about feeling watched in her own house. Investigators dug deeper, considering whether someone else had access. A coworker? A friend? A neighbor? But the footprint didn't match anyone they interviewed. It kept circling back to the same conclusion, the one none of them wanted to confront. Somebody walked into that kitchen at the exact moment Daniel was dying. Somebody who knew where the camera was hidden. Somebody with a motive that went beyond jealousy. And the more they compared every detail, the harder it became to ignore the one possibility that scared everyone involved the most. By the second week of interviews, detectives realized they weren't dealing with a simple confession or a single unreliable witness. They were dealing with 2 women, both with reasons to protect themselves, both with stories that clashed at the most important moments. Kendra's version stayed the same: she went to babysit, Daniel was drinking, and the argument turned into chaos. She insisted she never touched the knife. She said she froze the moment she saw the wound. She repeated that she heard a woman's voice, soft but clear, coming from the hallway. Emily's version stayed firm: she left work early, sat in her car, and never stepped inside her house. She insisted the footprint wasn't hers and that she had no idea the camera was recording anything that night. But detectives noticed something neither woman addressed directly: the damaged camera. If Kendra had destroyed it, why? It held the only proof that could show Daniel was aggressive. If Emily destroyed it, why do it before calling for help? And if someone else destroyed it, who had access? Detectives pressed both women again. Kendra broke down during one interview. She cried for several minutes before whispering, "He wasn't the man people think he was." But when asked to explain, she shook her head and refused to say more. Her attorney stepped in, ending the conversation. Emily stayed controlled. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't cry. But when detectives showed her the tread comparison from the footprint, her expression changed for the first time. She looked away, tapping her fingers lightly on the table. She never denied her shoes looked similar, only that she wasn't there. Two women. Two stories. One truth buried somewhere between fear, guilt, and survival. Detectives left that room with one realization: this case was nowhere near solved. In the early weeks after Daniel's death, the pressure on investigators grew. The media circulated the story non-stop: teen babysitter in love with a married man, a headline that sold quickly but didn't reflect the deeper complications inside the case. Behind closed doors, prosecutors leaned toward charging Kendra. She was present. She had a motive, at least on paper. She had no explanation for the destroyed camera or the timeline gap during the argument. Public opinion also tilted heavily against her, fueled by rumors and assumptions about her role in Daniel's marriage troubles. Emily, on the other hand, appeared sympathetic. A working mother, a wife dealing with betrayal. A woman who claimed she was nowhere near the home. Her friends defended her. Her co-workers described her as responsible, steady, and dependable. People believed her before they even heard her full story. Detectives weren't convinced, but the case stalled. No new witnesses. No recovered footage. No physical evidence beyond the footprint, which wasn't enough to build charges. Meetings grew tense. Some argued they should move forward, others insisted there were too many unanswered questions. Eventually, momentum slowed. The file sat on the corner of a desk while investigators shifted to other cases. Kendra returned home on house arrest, frightened and unsure what her future would look like. She barely slept. Her mother tried to comfort her, but Kendra stayed silent, afraid anything she said could be twisted and used against her. Emily tried to return to her routine, acting as if life was settling again. She avoided questions from co-workers, telling them she just wanted peace. She didn't mention the nights she woke up suddenly, checking the hallway like she expected someone standing there. Everyone thought the case was drifting toward a quiet ending. But the investigation was about to jolt back open because of a single discovery made by a technician who refused to give up on a damaged piece of evidence. The hidden camera had been ripped from the wall, smashed, and tossed into the trash, but a single technician refused to believe the memory was completely lost. For days, he worked through damaged fragments, corrupted files, and half-erased frames. Most of it was unrecognizable static. But one night, close to midnight, he found something. A 2-second clip. Silent. Grainy. Almost useless until he slowed it down. The footage showed the hallway leading into the living room. The lights inside the house flickered from the storm outside, casting soft, blurry shapes across the wall. But one shape wasn't a reflection. It moved. A figure stepped halfway into view. Shoulders narrow. Hair pulled back. Height noticeably shorter than Daniel. The outline matched a woman, not a teenager. And definitely not Daniel. The technician replayed it dozens of times. Even with the poor quality, he could see the figure pause and turn toward the kitchen exactly where the argument had exploded. A split second later, the camera shook violently as if someone grabbed it. Then the footage ended. When detectives reviewed the clip, the room fell silent. There was no face, no clear clothing, but the posture and build leaned closer to Emily than Kendra. Still, it wasn't enough to confirm anything. It wasn't enough to charge anyone. But it was enough to reopen every question they thought they had answered. Emily said she had no explanation. She claimed she didn't recognize the figure, didn't know who would enter her home, and didn't know why the camera was ripped down. Her voice stayed calm, but her eyes shifted away from the screen each time it replayed. Kendra, on the other hand, insisted this was the proof she needed that she wasn't alone in the house, that someone else was standing in that hallway while Daniel was still alive. The clip didn't solve the case. It complicated it beyond anything investigators were ready for. Months later, the case sat in a strange limbo. No new evidence surfaced. No full confession came from either woman. And the community remained split down the middle, half believing Kendra acted out of panic, half believing Emily entered the home and changed the outcome of that argument. Kendra moved through her days like someone holding her breath. She avoided crowds, she avoided conversations. Part of her wanted to explain everything, but each time she tried, fear held her still. Her attorneys warned her that one wrong sentence could destroy her future. Emily held her ground just as tightly. She denied being there. She denied stepping into the hallway. She denied destroying the camera. To friends, she claimed she was the real victim left to pick up the pieces of a broken marriage and a community that whispered behind her back. Daniel's family pushed for answers, but they could not agree on who to blame. Some pointed at Kendra, calling her reckless and irresponsible. Others looked at Emily with suspicion, wondering why her story shifted around the edges each time she spoke. The damaged footage was shown to a small jury panel, but without a clear face or direct evidence, no charges were filed. The case was officially listed as unresolved, though everyone involved quietly knew it was far from settled in their minds. In the end, there were only questions. Was Kendra a frightened teenager caught in something she never understood? Or was Emily a wife pushed beyond her breaking point after discovering her husband's betrayal? Or was the truth a mixture of both, two lives colliding in one terrible moment that neither could undo? As for the figure in the hallway, no one ever came forward to claim it. And that single shadow left behind on a broken piece of footage continues to divide everyone who hears this story. So now it's your turn to decide. Who do you believe and why?